Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for a deep dive? Today's going to get interesting.
Definitely, yeah.
We're tackling the feminist political economy of communication.
Ooh, sounds complicated.
It's really not, I promise.
Okay, good.
Basically, it's about how power and gender collide in the media we see every single day, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's something that affects all of us, right?
100%. And we've got this amazing article by Ellen Riordan, super insightful. It dives right into this academic debate that's been going on.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Okay, so give us the lowdown.
So it's between two main camps, right? You've got your feminist cultural studies folks, and then your critical political economy people.
Okay, so two different groups. What's the big argument?
So both of them are looking at the same thing, how women are often misrepresented or marginalized in the media. Makes sense.
But they approach it in totally different ways.
Okay.
Feminist cultural studies, they're all about how media creates and reinforces these stereotypes,
Oh, okay. I'm with you.
like the classic damsel in distress trope, or how women are always portrayed as overly emotional, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you've got the critical political economy camp, and they're all about the economics of it all.
Okay, so more about who owns the media companies.
Exactly. Production decisions, money, influence, all that jazz.
Gotcha.
So Riordan's point is, for a long time, these two groups have just been doing their own thing.
Separate worlds.
Exactly. But there's this push now for them to, collaborate, you know?
Interesting. Trying to solve the same puzzle, but with different pieces.
Yeah, exactly. But it gets kind of tricky because feminist studies have been super influenced by postmodern thought.
Postmodern thought. Okay, for those of us who aren't scholars,
Right.
what does that even mean?
Basically, it's all about questioning everything, like grand narratives and absolute truths.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like saying, hey, maybe there's not one right way to see the world,
Right.
which can be tough to reconcile with political economy, which is all about structures and systems.
Yeah, like trying to mix oil and water.
Totally. But here's the cool thing. Even with these differences, both sides agree on one major thing.
What's that?
Globalization, it's had a huge impact, especially for women.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What do we mean by globalization in this context?
Basically, a handful of massive companies now control most of the global media, right?
It's true. You see it all the time. Disney buying ABC and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they use this power to spread their message everywhere.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's not just about entertainment. It's about shaping values, perceptions. It's a lot of power.
Especially for women, I imagine that's a bit concerning.
It can be, yeah, because these dominant narratives,
Yeah.
they're not always so kind to women.
Right.
Riordan gives a bunch of examples of how this often means fewer opportunities for women, especially in developing countries, to control their own narratives.
So it's like this global system just magnifies the inequalities we already see, right?
100%.
Okay, so this is getting very real world very fast.
Right.
But we started with this theoretical debate. How does all of this play out in our daily lives?
Well, one way is this whole private versus public sphere thing. Riordan talks about it.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. Certain fields are seen as more masculine or feminine.
Exactly. Like women are more into cultural studies, men are more into the economics.
Which is such an outdated stereotype.
I know, right? Like women are all about feelings and men are all about facts. So reductive.
The worst.
Right. But the thing is, second wave feminism really challenged this whole idea.
How so?
It said that the personal is always political.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So what happens in our homes, our relationships, it's all connected to these bigger power structures.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Right.
Okay, so we're talking about how those seemingly private aspects of our lives are actually very much influenced by these larger forces at play.
Exactly. And that's where this debate between feminist cultural studies and political economy really heats up.
How so? How so?
Well, some feminist scholars, they feel like political economy can be a bit too, zoomed out.
Okay.
Like it's so focused on these big abstract structures
Right.
that it misses the actual experiences of real women.
It's like, hey, those systems are important, but what about how they actually affect people's lives?
Exactly. They're saying you can't just reduce everything to economics.
You're missing the human element.
Right. The emotional, the social, the cultural, all of that shapes how women experience the world.
The map is not the territory.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, right?
Okay, so where do we go from here? It sounds like a complicated debate.
It is, but one of the key things that comes up is this whole question of value, like how does capitalism shape what we consider valuable?
Ooh, that's a big one. Unpack that for me.
Okay, so Political economists, they tend to focus on production, right? Who makes what, how it's made.
Right.
But feminists, they're saying, hold on, consumption matters too.
Like what we choose to buy and why.
Exactly. And what messages those choices send.
I see what you mean.
Think about it. When you're shopping, do you ever stop and think about the working conditions of the people who made your clothes?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, not always.
And do those conditions differ for men and women?
That's a really good point.
And that's what feminist economists like Marilyn Waring have been saying. Traditional economics totally ignores all the unpaid labor that women do.
All that invisible work, right?
Exactly. Cooking, cleaning, raising kids, it's all work, but it's not valued.
Because it doesn't have a price tag.
Exactly. And that has real consequences for women. And this leads us to another area where a feminist perspective is super important: advertising.
Oh, yeah. Advertising is everywhere. It definitely gets in our heads.
It does. And Riordan talks about how companies often target women as consumers, but in ways that rely on really narrow stereotypes.
Like all those beauty ads telling women they need to look a certain way.
Exactly. Or those products aimed at making women's domestic lives easier.
Cleaning products, all that.
Exactly. It's subtly reinforcing those traditional gender roles.
It's like, sure, you can be a CEO, but don't forget to keep your house spotless.
Right. And while some of it might seem empowering on the surface, it often masks the fact that women are still doing the majority of unpaid labor.
It's the illusion of having it all.
Exactly. And that's where intersectionality comes in, which Riordan also talks about.
Right, because not all women experience the world in the same way.
Exactly. Race, class, sexual orientation, all of these things shape how women experience media and advertising.
So a black woman might interpret an ad completely differently than a white woman.
Exactly. And these different experiences mean they might be targeted by advertisers in very specific ways.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure, the article talks about the California Civil Rights Initiative
Okay.
and how, even though it claimed to be about equality, it actually ended up reinforcing racial stereotypes.
Wow, that's really messed up.
It is, and it highlights why media literacy is so crucial.
So we can see through those manipulative tactics.
Exactly. We need to be able to look beyond the surface message and understand the power dynamics at play.
So be more critical consumers of media, but how do we actually do that?
Well, one of the most important things is to diversify your media diet.
Okay, like trying new foods.
Exactly. Don't just stick to the same old news sources. Seek out voices from marginalized communities, independent media. Challenge your own worldview.
Get out of that echo chamber.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to have your assumptions challenged.
Be open to new perspectives.
Absolutely. And another thing is to pay attention to who's funding the media you consume.
Follow the money, right?
Exactly. Is it a nonprofit? A corporation?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding their motivations is key.
Good point.
And finally, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just passively consume media. Engage with it.
Be an active participant.
Exactly. What are the underlying assumptions? Who benefits from this narrative?
Those are great questions to ask.
Right. The choices we make, what we watch, read, listen to, it all shapes the media landscape.
So we've talked about a lot, Race.
We have, yeah.
This whole idea of media power, the importance of a feminist perspective, being a critical consumer, all that.
A lot to unpack.
So as we wrap up, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? Like, what can they actually do?
Well, I think it starts with awareness, like really paying attention to those little biases, the assumptions about gender roles, race, all those things that pop up in media.
Yeah, it's like you can't unsee it once you start noticing it.
Exactly. And once you see it, you can start questioning it.
Right.
Like, who benefits from this? Whose voices are missing? You know, think about the power dynamics.
And we talked about diversifying our media intake.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Super important.
Step outside that comfort zone, seek out different voices, challenge your own assumptions.
It's like be open to being wrong, realizing that our own experiences aren't universal.
It's so easy to forget that, right?
Totally. And then, like, we're not powerless in all of this, right?
Right, exactly.
We can actually make a difference.
We have more power than we think.
Support the good stuff, amplify marginalized voices, use our voices to challenge harmful stuff.
Exactly. Vote with your wallet, your attention, all of that.
It all matters.
It really does.
We can create a better media landscape.
For everyone.
Exactly.
And it's important to remember, like, change doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
Right? It's a process. We got to stay vigilant, keep asking those questions.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure being here.
It's been so insightful. Really appreciate your expertise.
Of course. Happy to be here.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
This is just the beginning, right? There's always more to learn, more to discuss.
Always.
So keep those conversations going, keep questioning, keep pushing for a better media world.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep those critical thinking caps on.
And thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time for another deep dive into a topic that matters.